Hello, thank you so much for making the decision to click on my video. Today we are going to cover the motions to suppress recently filed in Bryan Kohberger's case. I will be doing this in a linear format, covering new and old information. With that said, let's jump into today's video. Bryan Kohberger, the defendant in this case, is charged with 1 count of burglary and 4 counts of murder in the first degree, in connection with the deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. Whatever this creep took from the King Road home is definitely going to be in evidence, and it could give us a huge insight into his motive. I don't think Bryan Kohberger went to the King Road home specifically to steal anything. If you do want more insight into my thoughts about what type of killer Bryan Kohberger is, you can check out this video I created before Kohberger was named a suspect, this video I created after Kohberger was arrested, or keep an eye out for the case study I plan to do on Kohberger in the near future. The information that Kohberger's attorneys are trying to suppress include information collected from his Amazon, Apple, and Google accounts, apartment, AT&T records, cell phone data records, white Honda Elantra, his parents' home, statements obtained during Kohberger's arrests, and last but not least, the evidence obtained during FBI analysis of a pen trap and trace device. Even if some of this evidence was suppressed due to the findings of an unlawful obtaining of DNA, we would still have surveillance footage that tracked the white Honda Elantra's movements to the King Road home and back to Bryan Kohberger's apartment, and the CSLI analysis of Kohberger's phone that corroborates these movements, which is the information that led police to view Bryan Kohberger as a suspect in the Idaho murders before they obtained his father's DNA sample. December 23, 2023, Corporal Payne of the Moscow PD requested a search warrant for Kohberger's AT&T account records in regards to the messages sent, calls made, and the whereabouts of the phone between November 12th and November 14th, 2023. The information received from this warrant was analyzed by FBI special agents who specialized in the analysis of historical CSLI or cell site location information. This information corroborates that at approximately 2:42 a.m., Kohberger's phone was utilizing cellular resources that provided coverage for his apartment complex in Pullman, Washington. This analysis also supported the phone being off during the time of the Idaho murders. The CSLI analysis also showed that Kohberger's phone was located south of Moscow, Idaho, near Blaine, Idaho, at about 4:48 a.m., after the murders were committed. CSLI shows that the phone is using resources that make their way back to Pullman, Washington, which all coincides with a white Elantra seen on surveillance. CSLI analysis also shows that around approximately 9 a.m. the next morning, the phone is using resources that are consistent with a trip into Moscow, Idaho, and a returning trip back to Pullman, Washington, around 9:32 a.m. The new information given to us by this motion to suppress includes that police officers do not believe that Kohberger's trip back to the King Road home around 9 a.m. and return at 9:32 a.m. did not occur. There is no information given in this motion to suppress that backs up this belief. I'm guessing information obtained during this search gave Kohberger an alibi during this time. Still, it's curious why the CSL records show that this trip occurred. Maybe Kohberger's attorneys will get lucky and the judge will decide to suppress the evidence obtained by the pen trap and trace device, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you are trying to prove that the Honda Elantra on surveillance is Kohberger's, and if the prosecutors are trying to prove the motive for the crimes I think they are trying to prove, it is a little bit of a big deal. However, FBI was surveilling Kohberger for weeks after the murders occurred, and surveillance footage of Bryan's whereabouts coinciding with his cell phone records can be used to show the accuracy of the pen, trap, and trace device. Once again, we have information that is for the big picture, not necessarily revolutionary information, but must be included. Go ahead and pause the video at this time for more information about the filings of Kohberger's arrest warrants. Otherwise, let's keep going. At 2:43 p.m. on December 29, 2022, a criminal complaint and probable cause order were filed in this matter. At 10 p.m., Pennsylvania SWAT began preparations to arrest Bryan Kohberger. Before this time, Kohberger was under FBI surveillance for weeks. FBI surveillance showed that Kohberger was unarmed and tended to go for runs around his parents' neighborhood. Pennsylvania law enforcement started their own surveillance at 11:15 p.m. on December 29, 2022. On December 30th, 2022, Pennsylvania law enforcement acted on the arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger. At 1:14 a.m., Pennsylvania SWAT raided Kohberger's parents' home. During this raid, law enforcement broke the front door of the home, shattered the sliding glass door of the basement, held the entire family at gunpoint, and seized Bryan Kohberger. At this time, Kohberger made statements to his arresting officer. I think Kohberger's attorneys made sure to add all this information in to show that the arrest SWAT team was pretty brutish about the arrest, which I admit is unfortunate for Kohberger's parents. I also believe that this was a tactic by police officers to create tension in the family. During Kohberger's transport to the police station in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Kohberger continued to make statements. At the station, during processing, police collected items from his person, and during an interrogation of Kohberger made statements before he requested an attorney. The interrogating officers were from the Idaho State Police and Moscow Police Departments. I'd assume that Kohberger's statements during this time weren't very incriminating, so we are not missing much. Still, would be nice to witness his acting chops and do a little bit of behavior analysis, but we will survive. At 4 a.m. on December 30th, 2023, Pennsylvania State Police filed a criminal complaint against Kohberger. At 4:10 a.m., FBI agents searched Mr. Kohberger's person, took his fingerprints, took pictures of his body, and a DNA swab was taken. After Kohberger's arrest, an FBI agent made a copy of the contents on Kohberger's cell phone on an external USB drive. I believe the FBI's involvement is to assist Idaho and Pennsylvania police departments in evidence handling, chain of custody across state borders, evidence analysis, surveillance, etc. Call me a nerd, but my personal opinion is that if homicide detectives are heroes, FBI agents are superheroes. On January 5th, 2023, Sergeant Blaker requested a search warrant for Kohberger's person. Kohberger's person was searched, pictures of his body, his fingerprints, and a DNA swab were taken by members of Idaho and federal law enforcement at the Latah County Jail. It's kind of curious to me that Kohberger's attorney uses the word federal law enforcement. Well, we can take some agencies out of the equation and take bets. My money is on United States Marshal. The United States Marshal Service is a federal law enforcement agency that carries out a variety of duties, one of which is transporting prisoners. The USMS manages the Justice Prisoner and Alien Transportation System, which moves prisoners between correctional institutions, judicial districts, and foreign countries. On the night Kohberger was arrested and his parents' home was searched, arresting officers found his vehicle in the garage. They took his vehicle into custody and searched it at a later date. Not much to note in this motion to suppress. During a subsequent search of Kohberger's vehicle, a receipt was located for an Apple iPad. One full iCloud account under the name Bryan Kohberger was in active status, and another account, Wi-Fi Army owns at yahoo.com, was inactive. It was determined that the AMS subscriber account was linked to B. Kohberger at spartan.northampton.edu. An investigating detective, Corporal Payne, requested information on any and all Apple accounts linked to Kohberger in a broad time frame which started October 7th, 2016 to December 30th, 2022. The username Wi-Fi Army owns at yahoo.com makes me think that maybe Kohberger had or has a significant presence in online community rooms and social media. B. Kohberger at spartan.northampton.edu gives us the information that Bryan Kohberger attended Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania, a fact already known to journalists. December 16, 2022, Kohberger was observed entering a CVS in Pennsylvania, and his email account, BryanChristopher1994 at gmail.com, and phone number was obtained by law enforcement at this time. BryanChristopher1994 at gmail.com, 2 phone numbers, and an IMEI number that was linked to Kohberger's Google use. And another warrant was issued, this time for username at gmail.com, which was linked to Kohberger after it was found in connection with information obtained from Google Warrant 1's data return. I bet this is the email address Kohberger would have used for things like community chat rooms and other websites he didn't want his real name associated with. Which doesn't necessarily mean anything nefarious, but it does show that he likely has an internet presence that he doesn't want his real name tied to. 2 more email addresses were included in the Google search warrants. bk5781 at gmail.com, bk5781 at displays.edu, which Kohberger's attorneys used as a talking point to explain that the warrant didn't really explain the nexus point for these emails, and displays.edu doesn't exist, but desales.edu does. Hardly information that would be the basis for throwing out years of investigation. FBI agents obtained order history records regarding a customer email, BryanChristopher1994 at gmail.com, an account linked to Bryan Kohberger. This information obtained led FBI agents to records stored by Amazon, which includes identifying devices the customer used to access their account, all linked accounts, other items customers have searched for, clicked on, placed in cart, and saved. The time frame, March 20th through March 30th, 2022, and November 1st through December 6th, 2022, were selected by investigators in a subpoenaed Amazon record. This leads me to believe that something that Bryan Kohberger purchased or searched for on or around March 20th, 2022, through his Amazon account and received or continued to make searches for on or around March 30th, 2022, has something to do with the case against Kohberger and may be an exhibit in the case against him. I would argue the same would be true for his searches and/or purchases and possible receiving of an item on or around the times between November 1st and December 6th, 2022. Do I believe that there is any merit to these motions to suppress? Investigative genetic genealogy testing has been used in many criminal investigations since the early 2000s to help solve crimes. And this is not going to be the case that breaks the use of IgG into a Supreme Court ruling against its use. However, I do believe that if an ordinance existed in the gated community in which Kohberger's parents lived had strict regulations pertaining to garbage removal, and those regulations showed that it is unlawful for someone, including law enforcement, to remove garbage and other materials from trash receptacles within the gated community, that may cause a problem for the validity of any affidavit consisting of this paragraph on the screen now. However, I did not find any information on the Indian Mountain Lake community in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, waste removal ordinance that I believe would hinder police officers' ability to remove trash from receptacles in said community. And no such ordinance is referenced in any of the motions to suppress and memorandum in supports filed by Bryan Kohberger's attorneys. As for the jurisdiction issues referenced by Kohberger's attorneys, I believe that the presence of FBI agents will clear up any stipulations to come from issues pertaining to Pennsylvania and Idaho's joint investigation efforts. Some of these motions to suppress may lead to modifications to include more in-depth clarifications, but I do not believe that any of the evidence will be thrown out. And there is a lot of evidence. Please like, comment, and subscribe as it helps my channel grow, lets me know I'm doing a good job, and best of all, it's free.